Never attempt to outshine the sun. You'll only wind up squinting and sweating. According to scientists, the human body generates around 100 watts of electricity just by existing, which is sufficient to keep a light bulb on. But a selected one? We're talking about megawatt energy, which cannot be purchased, borrowed, or imitated without short-circuiting. Nevertheless, they keep coming. The imitators, the wannabes, the people who see your brightness and think, yeah, I can do that too. But they don't comprehend your enthusiasm isn't just a mood you put on every morning. It's the result of battles won, storms weathered, and a spiritual voltage that only heaven can provide. They begin increasing their power, but instead of radiating like you, they overheat, flicker, and seem, well, ridiculous. And here's the thing. When others attempt to mimic your frequency without experiencing your experience, they wind up sending static. They may mimic your words, manner, and walk, but the deeper current that defines you is impenetrable. This is why they seem like knockoff designer bags in a room full of originals. They believe they are blending in, yet everyone notices the difference. Are you ready to grasp why their efforts to emulate you will fail? Let's look at the 14 reasons why they can never stay up. They are running on a battery that they don't own. It appears every time. Your energy is not something you acquired along the way, like a popular fad. It's not something you learn at a workshop or via a motivational speech. It's in your DNA. It's the culmination of years of conflicts, changes, and divine wiring that you didn't ask for, but were selected to bear. People see the outcomes of that power. The way you go into a room and change the mood without saying anything, and think, I can do that too. But what they don't understand is that they're pursuing an effect without knowing the source. It's like holding a phone without a charger. The screen finally turns dark. Your battery was charged via experiences they've never had. Your current is the result of every heartache, uncertainty, and silent success in the dark when no one was applauding. You didn't simply wake up like this. You were programmed to function at a higher level because life drove you to. That power cannot be imparted, borrowed, or stolen, no matter how many mannerisms or catchphrases they mimic. When people attempt to match your enthusiasm, it always seems odd because they are pushing something that comes easily to you. You move with ease, which comes from alignment rather than effort. They're pushing, overcompensating, and finally exhausting themselves. It's not that they're awful people, it's just that they're trying to navigate a lane that wasn't designed for them. They believe it is about personality, while in fact it is about the power supply. That's the thing about a chosen one's energy. It's self-sustaining since its source is greater than yourself. You may go through a storm and yet come out sparkling because your battery is charged by calling, not by circumstances. Meanwhile, they rely on external approval, buzz, and short bursts of drive to keep going. Without an audience, their lights fade. Without care, they shut down. So, although they may duplicate the gestures, style, and tone, they will never be able to sustain the output since they are connected into an outlet that was never theirs in the first place. Sooner or later, the whole room realizes the difference between constant power and a flickering light. Their confidence is a costume, but yours is a bloodline. That is the element they will never be able to replicate, no matter how convincing they attempt to seem. They might walk with their chest out, wear the latest fashion, and speak with additional swagger, but it's all a facade, like a dress that gets hung back up at the end of the day. Your confidence is lived, not worn. It is not a show. It is the result of survival. It was erected in the days when you had nothing except your resolve to keep going, when life stripped you down to the point where you had to choose between standing or sitting. As a result, your confidence remains consistent. It does not increase while people are watching and decrease when the audience goes. It does not rely on applause, attention, or anybody else's praise. It is founded on the reality of who you are and what you've conquered. You don't need to prove yourself because you already know yourself, and that self-awareness radiates in ways others can't replicate. When they attempt to replicate it, the fractures are always visible. Their body language is odd, their timing is forced, and their presence seems borrowed. People often confuse confidence with loudness, but yours has nothing to do with volume. In fact, your calm periods are often the loudest because others can sense the weight of your presence. That is not something you can fake. When they attempt to imitate it, they end up overdoing it, talking too much, trying too hard, or pushing situations to make themselves seem larger. The more they strive to match you, the clearer it becomes that their confidence does not stem from inside. The fact is that your confidence has been fully earned through years of struggle, progress, and self-respect. You've been in rooms where you didn't belong and stood your ground. You've endured setbacks while maintaining a positive attitude. That creates an imprint on your soul that cannot be reproduced by imitation. They could have the costume, but not the heritage. That is the distinction. A garment may be removed, while a bloodline is ingrained. When it's in you, it's permanent. When it comes to you, it is just momentary. No matter how hard they try to mimic your intensity, the mask eventually falls and the difference is obvious. They are performing for a crowd that you no longer need. That's why their efforts to match your enthusiasm usually seem wrong. You no longer rely on people's emotions as fuel. You've moved beyond the period when you required regular approval to feel valued. Your feeling of value is now based on purpose, not the number of claps you get. That shift alters everything because when you come into a room, you are not there to impress. You are there to be. And that presence, that confident stillness, is difficult to imitate. For them, performance is everything. They are continuously looking for the audience, both physically and emotionally. They need someone to notice, verify, and say, "You're killing it." Without this, their enthusiasm begins to wane. It's as if they need a spotlight to function, but you've learned to shine even in the dark. As a consequence, they exhaust themselves trying to maintain an image, while you just live in your own self, regardless of who is looking. The difference is that you've already reached the breaking point of accepting that not everyone will applaud you, and you're okay with it. You've had to persevere in the face of no praise, appreciation, or cheering section. In that area, you realize something profound. Your worth does not grow or decrease depending on who is paying attention. Once you've experienced that type of independence, you'll never want to return to a life of continual affirmation. Here is where they fail. They're still performing for the audience, so their intensity varies depending on who's there. Yours does not. You present the same way in front of 10 or 10,000 people because your genuineness does not change with audience size. That constancy makes you appealing, and it's why people trust you. They know you're genuine. At the end of the day, their energy is dependent on praise, but yours is fueled by alignment. That's why they become exhausted trying to keep up with you. You've learned to survive without the audience, and that's a level they can't fake, because the instant the audience turns away, their confidence fades. They are drowning in the same water that you learned to breathe in. And there is the unshakable distinction. You didn't merely visit suffering, you experienced it. You're familiar with the currents, undercurrents, unexpected dips, and silent threats that go unnoticed until it's too late. Those seas that frighten them now are the same ones that taught you how to move without fear, how to locate oxygen where there shouldn't be, and how to maintain your rhythm while everything around you is chaotic. You didn't come out the same. Instead, you came out with a quiet but undeniable power. The trouble is, they believe your comfort is normal. They mistake your ability to remain cool in stressful circumstances for a natural personality attribute. They watch how you breeze over challenges and believe you're either fortunate or unconcerned. What they do not realize is that this ease was earned. It is the outcome of several situations in which you had no option but to adapt or be eaten. You've learned how to save energy during storms, how to concentrate when pandemonium demands your attention, and how to believe in yourself even when everything else is unclear. They are unable to match such strength because they lack the necessary experience. When the waves get turbulent, they gasp for oxygen, flail for stability, and exhibit fractures in their serenity. You, on the other hand, move efficiently. No wasted motion, no unneeded stress. That is the difference between someone who has been trained via survival and someone who has merely studied it from the shore. This is why people see you with both adoration and resentment. They want how you handle yourself amid storms, but not the storms themselves. They want the elegance, not the grind. They aim to use the breathing method without ever running out of air. but it doesn't operate that way. What they call vibes is a refined survival skill. The reality emerges as the floods begin to rise, no matter how much people attempt to pretend otherwise. They are copying the fruit without cultivating the tree. This is why their version never lasts. What others perceive in you, the glow, charm, calm authority, and ability to dominate a room without even trying, did not appear overnight. It's the visible product of years of discipline, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. You've worked while no one was looking. You took difficult decisions when it would have been easy to take shortcuts. You've established a root system that can withstand storms, droughts, and seasons when nothing seems to grow. That is why your fruit is authentic, long-lasting, and nutritious. When they attempt to emulate you, they only look at what they can see. They want your outcomes, not your approach. They want your aura, not your alignment. They attempt to wear your glow as an accessory, but since they haven't done the necessary effort, their fruit lacks vitality. It's similar like placing wax apples in a bowl. They appear fine from a distance, but up close, there's no flavor, sustenance, or authenticity. Your energy feels distinct because it is tied to a source. Every word you say, every action you do, is supported by the roots you've grown through prayer, fasting, particular habits, harsh lessons, and character development. You've dug, watered, and pruned. That is why, even during difficult seasons, you may still generate something useful. For them, everything revolves around performance. They may replicate your style, vocabulary, or actions, but since they lack a true root system, their version decays soon. They burn out. They get exposed. People can tell the difference between naturally grown fruit and artificially produced fruit. This is why you do not need to compete with imitation. Time performs the disclosing for you. Real fruit withstands the test of time. Real fruit nourishes humans. Real fruit multiplies because it is living. And when the roots are deep, the tree doesn't mind the wind. That is the truth they do not grasp. You did more than merely develop branches. You also created roots. That is why you are still standing, and they are still attempting to reconnect fallen leaves. They don't realize that your energy is more than just a mood. It is authority. And that is the gap they will never narrow, no matter how intently they study you. They believe that energy is about being cheery, charming, or on at the correct times. They think it's about personality peculiarities, body language, and creative wordplay. But for you, it's not about performance, but about being there. Your energy rules the room rather than just appearing in it. It's not because you're attempting to dominate. It's because you have a presence that naturally alters the environment. That is the difference between mood and authority. One is fleeting and self-created, but the other is based in something greater than you. Your authority was not something you chose. It was formed through difficulties, reinforced by perseverance, and sealed by a greater power. That is why it does not flicker whether you are sleepy, the audience is chilly, or the situation is tense. You move with a spiritually and psychologically branded assurance. People may not understand why they react to you differently, but they do. It is instinctual. Real authority does not seek permission. It is accepted without saying a word. When they attempt to replicate it, everything goes apart rapidly. They can emulate your speech patterns, facial gestures, and even your posture, but they lack authority, so it comes off as empty. It's like seeing an actor portray a part they don't really comprehend. People see the change right away, even if they can't express it. They may think something feels off, but what they are experiencing is a lack of credibility. Mood may be produced, but authority cannot. The mood fluctuates according on how you feel, who is around, and what is going on. Authority is maintained regardless of the environment. That is why you may be quiet and yet be respected, but others can be loud and be disregarded. The weight you bear was gained by obedience to your calling, wounds that transformed into knowledge, and standing steady when it would have been simpler to back down. This is what gives their endeavors the appearance of a parody. They are playing dress-up with something that cannot be worn. You may borrow a mood, but you cannot impersonate authority. It is either in you or not. Their aura is painted, but yours is lived in. That is the kind of difference that cannot be compensated for with style or presentation. They may purchase the style, master the lingo, copy your speech, and even practice the rhythm of your motions. But all they're doing is layering paint on an empty wall. It may seem believable from a distance, but when you come closer, you notice there is no depth, substance, or narrative behind it. Your aura, on the other hand, is shaped by every chapter of your life. The high spots, the heartbreaks, the late-night battles with uncertainty, and the quiet victories that no one witnessed. It's worn like a garment that has been formed by your body over time, tailored to your life in a manner that no one else can match. It bears the perfume of your journey, the scars of your trials, and the comfort of knowing who you are without having to prove it. You didn't pick it up yesterday. It's been with you through difficult seasons, and its history has given it a depth that you can't purchase or imitate. When they attempt to equal you, they concentrate on the surface. They feel that if they can manage the external, the appearance, tone, and outward energy, they will be seen in the same manner that you are. However, a painted aura chips. It fades under the burden of existence. When the paint cracks, the blankness underneath it is seen. People may not be able to articulate precisely why their version is odd, but they certainly sense it. Yours does not fade since it is embedded rather than coded. It's how you present yourself even when you're not attempting to impress somebody. It's the same sensation you feel when others admire or criticize you. It is lived in, and that lived-in feel lends it a genuineness that draws people in without effort. That's why no matter how closely they mimic your style, it never comes across the same. A painted aura may be attractive, but a lived-in aura is strong. One washes away, the other is forever, and permanence always outperforms performance. They overheat because they are forcing a frequency, and it is tiring them in ways they refuse to accept. You work in an environment that is conducive to your purpose, so your energy flows naturally. It's not about puffing yourself up or putting on a show. It's about being true to yourself and your purpose. That alignment means you don't have to work hard to be magnetic. It's simply who you are. They face a never-ending uphill battle. They must strive, exaggerate, and overcompensate to achieve the level at which you live every day. They provide unsustainable highs, and as a result, they burn out rapidly. You'll notice they're on, one day, attempting to exude the same glow and confidence, and then they disappear, become silent, or altogether change personalities the next. That is the cost of operating on a frequency that is not theirs. It drains them rather than feeds them. Your energy functions differently. It refills itself because it is grounded in sincerity and purpose. You aren't pushing it, you're just being. That is why you can keep a consistent presence whether things are going well or anarchy breaks out. You've learned to move from a position of alignment, so you'll never have to fake momentum. That's also why people trust you more. Your energy is constant, not erratic. When they strive to keep up, their inconsistency reveals them. People begin to notice the fluctuations. They act as if they have everything under control one week and then break apart over little issues the next. Your stability draws attention to their instability without you having to say anything. It's not that you're outshining them. It's that their light continues to flicker since it's powered by borrowed electricity. The fact is that when you're in alignment, frequency comes naturally. Imitation is tiresome. Eventually, the difference becomes apparent. You'll keep jogging at the same steady rate as others attempt to regain their breath and wonder how you do it. The solution is simple. You are not pushing it. You are made for it, and it is something they cannot fake. They mistook your stillness for something they could fake. And here is where they absolutely miss the point. Your stillness is not the lack of action, but the presence of conviction. You do not need to hurry to prove yourself. You don't have to seize every chance to be seen, and you don't have to fill every void with noise. The peace you exude stems from understanding who you are, where you're headed, and what's worth your time. It's the type of calm that can only be gained through trials that teach you how to stay solid when everything else is shaky. When they attempt to imitate it, it doesn't work as well. They seem quiet, indifferent, or unconnected because they lack the substance to maintain that stillness. For you, quiet is a strategic position. You're keeping your ground because you know the proper time will arrive. For them, it's just frozen in place and hoping it conveys confidence. The difference is that your quietness emanates confidence, whilst theirs exudes doubt. People may sense the reality of quiet. They may not be able to describe it, but they can tell when calm is rooted in experience and when it is really an act. Your composure has been challenged. You've encountered events that would have shaken most people, yet you remained calm. That past is embedded in your energy, making your stillness compelling rather than uninteresting. Their version is lacking the foundation. It's superficial, based on the assumption that seeming unconcerned would make others feel they have control. But when pressure is applied, the facade fractures. They become restless, fidgety, or irritable because they have never learned to ground themselves from within. You, on the other hand, can wait without losing concentration because you understand the difference between waiting and squandering time. This explains why imitation fails. Stillness without assurance is just standing still. Yours has weight because it is supported by knowledge, patience, and a strong belief in time. Theirs fails because it's just another stance they're putting on. No matter how convincing they believe it is, people can tell when the calm is genuine and when it is contrived. They are selling a version of themselves that they cannot afford to maintain, and it shows when life demands payment. Matching your energy does not imply purchasing the appropriate clothing, uttering the right words, or imitating your style. Most individuals are unprepared for the emotional and spiritual cost of carrying themselves the way you do. Your energy was acquired via development from sorrow, insight from errors, and strength from seasons when you had to rebuild from scratch. You've already paid in full, so you may move in with ease. They're attempting to emulate the appearance without actually engaging in the creative process. They desire confidence without the rejection that helped create it. They want grace without the storms that taught it. They seek authority without the sacrifices required to obtain it. Because they cut corners, what they're offering is a knockoff. It may pass for the genuine thing in brief, casual interactions, but when tested, it fails. Life always sends the bills. It manifests itself in the form of failures, struggles, and moments that expose the truth behind the deed. When the payment comes, they are unable to pay it since they never invested in the foundation. Their energy crumbles beneath the weight of real-life strain because it is kept together by performance rather than honesty. You, on the other hand, have had enough experience to know that even when everything is disturbed, you will hold firm. Your presence seems constant since you are not attempting to maintain a pretense. You're merely being who you've become. There's no need to keep up appearances since what others see is who you really are. They must, however, strive continually to maintain the image, which is unsustainable. Eventually, the disparity between the picture and reality becomes apparent. The act crumbles, the audience sees through it, and the reality is difficult to conceal. That is the difference. You have already paid for the life you carry, whilst others are just trying it on without recognizing the cost of ownership. They can't keep up since they don't understand the source code. That's why their replication is usually flawed. Your energy is not merely a combination of charm, flair, and intelligence. It's powered by an unseen operating system comprised of your thoughts, ideals, and connection to something higher than yourself. That internal programming is what keeps your presence constant and your effect genuine. It's not simply what you do, but the invisible framework that determines how and why it works for you. Every motion is linked to a deeper structure. Your judgments are consistent with your ideals, your words are based on personal experience, and your actions are driven by an endless supply of energy. You've spent years updating and refining your internal code, unlearning what no longer serves you, implementing new disciplines, and increasing your connection to the truth. That is why, when life throws you a curveball, you can adjust without losing your identity. They do not have that structure. They are just replicating the visible bits of your application without the backend to support it. It's similar to tapping random buttons on a gadget without understanding the operating system. Something may function for a short period of time, but then the whole system fails. When faced with a task, they scramble and guess their way through since they lack internal navigation directions. When the performance begins glitching, people can tell the difference between the original and the copycat. The problem is unavoidable since they depend on short-term memory rather than profound comprehension. They may copy your tone, mannerisms, and method of dealing with circumstances, but without your source code. Everything is try and error. And trial and error cannot maintain the kind of consistent energy you possess. Your strength stems from understanding where your power originates from, and that knowledge keeps you anchored and unshakable. They're just relying on borrowed movements, with no actual supply. So, while they're continuously restarting, you're operating smoothly, not because you're perfect, but because your system is based on something that can't be copied or hacked. In the long term, the distinction between a patched-together copy and an original design is difficult to ignore. They don't realize that you're not competing, but creating. And that's why every effort to match you makes them seem out of place. They're fixated on comparing themselves to you, scrutinizing your every move as if you're both playing the same sport. But here's the thing, you're not even in the same game. You are creating, developing, and inventing, while others are trapped in comparison mode, shadowboxing with someone who has already moved on to the next thing. Your goal isn't to prove you're better than anybody else. It's to answer the call inside you, create something new, and push your own limits. That's why your energy is always fresh. You are not rehashing past movements to maintain appearances. You are continuously coming up with new ideas, tactics, and ways to develop. People can sense the difference. They can identify when someone is leading from vision rather than responding to someone else's actions. They, on the other hand, can't stop chasing. They observe what you do and quickly want to repeat it, believing that it will have the same effect. However, since they are always following, they are always behind. They are striving for where you were, not where you are now. By the time they believe they've figured out your rhythm, you've already altered it. This is why they seem goofy, not because they lack potential, but because they've been caught in a game you're not even playing. Competing against someone who isn't competing back makes their actions seem pointless, frantic, and even foolish. You're not standing still waiting for them to catch up. You're going at your own speed, motivated by something more than competition. What they don't realize is that genuine power does not come from outperforming others. It comes from being the most authentic version of yourself. You're not looking for points, praise, or titles. You're in it to do what you came here to accomplish. And when you operate in that environment, competition becomes unimportant. They may continue shadowboxing all they want, but the bout is just in their imaginations. You've already left the ring and begun developing something they can't replicate, because invention always outperforms imitation. They are attempting to match the glow without surviving the burn. What people perceive as your shine is not a filter, appearance, or vibe. It is the residue of every hardship that did not result in your death. Your light was formed in circumstances that stretched you to your limits, periods when you had to rebuild from the ashes, and seasons when you walked through agony without being applauded. That light thereafter wasn't given to you. It was pulled from the same flames that might have killed you. They want brilliance without the process and identification without the refinement. However, the light that comes with surviving is unique. It has depth, warmth, and weight. It's not simply light for show. It tells the tale of all you've been through. When you've been through fire and survived, you don't simply look different. You're different. Your energy exudes the brilliance of wounds healed, lessons learned, and faith tested under strain. They attempt to reproduce the result without first experiencing the process. They may imitate your style, amplify your confidence, or stage the same look, but it's all superficial. Their sheen has no weight since it was not achieved by persistence. When life cranks up the heat, the glow fades because it was never fueled by resilience, but rather by appearance. This is why people can sense the difference. Real glow has a texture that manufactured gloss cannot match. It doesn't have to shout to be seen. It just shines out because it's alive. When you've survived your own fires, you have a quiet authority that says, "I've been where most can't go, and I came back stronger." That isn't something you can learn from a trend or observe. Fire alone can teach you this. The fact is that many people desire the reward without the refinement. However, the burn is what gives the light its strength. You can always tell who has gone through it and who is simply doing it. Yours is lived in, tried, and true. Theirs, no matter how convincing it seems at first, will soon show its hollowness because you cannot fake the type of brightness that comes with surviving the dark. They've forgotten that energy is evidence of evolution. The way you walk, talk, and carry yourself today is not a coincidence. It is live evidence that you have progressed through each stage in combat. Your energy did not appear overnight. It is the consequence of years of changing, learning, healing, and embracing a version of yourself that you had to battle for. It is not a performance, it is a recording. Every individual who has actually experienced their own growth may read it like a book. This is what makes the replicas so empty. They're obsessed with replicating the signs, confidence, presence, and ease, without actually undergoing the transition that makes those things genuine. It's like wearing a medal that you didn't deserve. It may dazzle for a time, but anybody who has earned the real thing knows it's not genuine. Energy is not a costume. It is a currency acquired through experience. And the world knows when you haven't paid the price. Your energy bears weight because it has been tested. There's a depth that comes with traveling through situations that might have dragged you down, but instead of sinking, you grew. Evolution has left its fingerprints all on you. It's about how you respond rather than reacting. It's the ability to remain calm in the midst of turmoil. It's in the manner that you don't need to prove yourself since your presence speaks for itself. They don't understand that energy cannot be hurried. You cannot skip stages in evolution and have the same outcome. They want to avoid the growth while yet walking with the power that it brings. But this is not how it works in both the spiritual and social realms. Counterfeit energy finally fails under the weight of examination. People begin to see the flaws, inconsistencies, and lack of substance behind the gloss. Your evolution gave you something they can't reproduce, not because you're attempting to conceal it, but because it's impossible to duplicate without following the same route. Most are unwilling to walk it. That is why, no matter how hard they try, their energy will always seem inadequate in comparison to yours. Evolution is the one thing that cannot be faked, and your energy is evidence that you have experienced it. At the end of the day, this isn't about you being superior to anybody. It's about how you were formed differently. Your energy isn't just something you put on in the morning. It represents the culmination of every lesson, loss, and leap of faith you've taken. You did not wake up with this frequency. You developed it, bled for it, and learned to defend it. That's why, no matter how hard they try, anybody seeking to emulate it without first experiencing your process would always fall short. They see the fruit, but overlook the years of cultivation. They want the brightness, but not the fire. They imitate the presence, but lack the discipline that created it. And here is when the distinction becomes apparent. Because energy founded on imitation will always burn out, but energy based on truth can only get stronger over time. How about the beauty? You don't need to prove anything. You do not need to outperform the imitators. Simply keep traveling in your path and let your growth to speak for itself. Those who grasp it will notice the difference. Those that don't will be compelled to see it when the charade wears out. So, keep inventing. Continue developing. Continue to breathe in the places they drown. Stand in the quiet they can't fake. And move with authority they can't earn. Because your energy is more than just a feeling. It is proof. And proof always outlasts performance. If this connected with you and you want to help us further our cause, we would be thankful. You can help us continue this vital work by leaving a $10 gift using the Super Thanks button. Don't stop there. Subscribe to the God Connection channel to guarantee you don't miss our next inspiring message. Your tales, support, and presence are what keep this community thriving. Blessings to all of the amazing beings on our path.